Hare Krishna Prabhuji, why is the mind antagonistic, oppositional to our true spiritual nature? Or why does it work in the opposite direction?
Material mind is the actually covering of the soul, subtle part of the subtle covering of the soul, and its job is to do that. Maya, or material energy, she works a lot through the mind. She also works through the senses. So that is the business of the mind, actually, material mind, to distract us. It is said also about the senses that senses are like 5 wives who are pulling you in 5 different directions and asking you to enjoy with me. So 5 senses like 5 wives. And then the conditioned soul, poor conditioned soul, surrenders to one of the senses or to more than one of the senses, and in this way it becomes entangled in sense gratification. And in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that even if one of the senses is prominent and you focus on gratifying one of the senses, it can actually completely put you in Maya. It can completely distract you from your Krishna consciousness, from your spiritual consciousness.
So the mind is the controller of the senses. It's compared to the leash on a chariot with the 5 horses, the wild senses. So if it is the leash,
Reins. It's called reins.
The reins.
Uh-huh.
As the reins, why does it seem like the reins is just sometimes shaking on its own, without the horses even going?
The nature of the mind is described in the Bhagavad Gita as chanchala. Chanchala means flickering. So mind is always going from this sense object to that sense object, and it's all over the universe, all over the place. So this is how the mind is designed. The material mind is designed to distract the conditioned soul from his focus on Krishna, on God. So therefore it is said, Boga Ishvarya Prasaktanam, Kaya Pakrita Chetasam, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir, Samadho Navidiyate. Those who are bewildered by the glaring effulgence of the material energy in the form of different sense objects, they don't develop a strong determination for devotional service. So those who are attracted to the glare of Maya, and who are bewildered by this, they don't develop a strong determination for devotional service. The mind and the senses are interrelated, and if the mind is not controlled, then actually the senses take over. Now it is true that the senses might not be so agitated. The senses may be seemingly peaceful and the mind may be agitated, but sooner or later the mind and the senses will engage in some nonsense activity. So you may be like a yogi, may be meditating. That means he is not moving. His senses are peaceful. He is sitting in one place trying to breathe. But we have examples of yogis like Saubhari Muni. He even went under the water because he could breathe under the water. So he went under the water to avoid any sense objects, but then 2 fish in front of his eyes were having sex. and he got agitated. He remembered the sex of a human being, and he actually desired to have sex, and then he went out, and then he got a new body, a younger body. So he was very peaceful, he was meditating, he was practicing yoga, but because his mind was not strong, at the first sight, even not of human beings having sex, but animals having sex, his senses became agitated and he wanted to satisfy his senses.
So, what forms of intelligence exist? How do they work? How do they differ? How do we develop them? And is the soul also intelligent, or rather, has the soul a propensity of intelligence as well?
These are several questions, so we will have to do one by one. So tell me the first one.
What forms of intelligence exist?
Well, we can give a rough categorization in material and spiritual intelligence, these two. But we have some scholars like Howard Gardner, he has wrote a book on multiple intelligences, and he has identified 9. Now, some people, some authors or some experts, they say that there is more than 9, and I don't know them all by heart, but I have one chart that maybe we can include together with the interview. We can include that chart. Recently somebody sent me that chart of 9 intelligences and brief explanation of each of them. For example, spatial intelligence. That means you are able to always find your way. When you are somewhere, you never get lost. Because you have spatial intelligence, you never get lost in the city. You can find a way how to go back home or how to go back to your friend. Then interpersonal intelligence, you are very good at communicating with people. It's called interpersonal intelligence. Or you can say communicational intelligence. Then intrapersonal intelligence has to do with how do you deal with yourself, how do you take care of yourself, how is your inner dialogue or your self-talk. Some people have musical intelligence, some people have what is the other, I can't remember.
Emotional intelligence?
Yeah, emotional intelligence is related to interpersonal intelligence and also intrapersonal intelligence. One author has divided these intelligences in 4. So, in relation to the body, to the mind, to spirit, and to the heart. And so physical intelligence means you are able to take care properly of your body, you understand how it functions, you understand what it needs. So you are very intelligent in taking care of your body. Then emotional intelligence, you are very intelligent in taking care of your emotions and of other people's emotions. Or heart intelligence. Oh, there is this, IQ, intelligence quotient, is actually refers to only one type of intelligence, that's logical mathematical intelligence. So that's one of the intelligences also, IQ. They say there is IQ, EQ, PQ, and SQ. So SQ is spiritual intelligence, but for them spiritual intelligence doesn't have to do with God, but it has to do with thinking deeply and nature and introspection, things like that. So they have this kind of conception. How these intelligences differ, I think the usage of each intelligence is different, and you just use different intelligences for different purposes. I I think that's the main difference between different intelligences. How do you use them? But it's obvious that some people have some intelligences more developed than others. Like some people are better in taking care of themselves, and some people are better in taking care of others. And some people are very good in logical, mathematical intelligence. They have a high IQ. So yes, one can develop actually all these different intelligences by using them. So, and there is nice techniques how one can develop and use intelligences. There are experts like Tony Buzan and Edward de Bono who actually teach you how to use your head, how to use your memory, how to use your mind, how to use your intelligence. And people speak about creative intelligence, So you can be creative in any type of intelligence. You can be creative. You can add this faculty of creativity in intelligence. And you have heard maybe about creative problem solving. Instead of getting angry when the problem arises, you take it as a challenge, and then you write it down, and then you try to be creative. Okay, how can I solve this problem creatively? How can I use my intelligence? How can I get help from other people? What are the options? What are the possibilities? What are the solutions? You ask yourself questions, and then what stimulates intelligence the most is questions, if you ask the right questions. So questions are powerful stimulator of intelligence, and therefore everybody who is trying to be creative, they ask themselves excellent questions. Very important in developing intelligence is curiosity, because intelligent people are very curious. They want to know how something works, how people work, how successful people work, how something functions in nature, how human relationships work. So they're very, very curious. Is the soul intelligent? Yes, the soul has spiritual intelligence, but the soul has also other kinds of intelligences which are needed for spiritual life, for spiritual service. But the soul, because its nature is spiritual, the main intelligence of the soul is spiritual intelligence. And when the soul gets covered by the material energy, also God gives the soul material types of intelligence, different kinds of material type of intelligence. So what is material intelligence? Material intelligence is how you can live in the material world, how you can enjoy, how you can make money, how you can become successful in the material way. These are some of the material aspects of intelligence. We do material intelligence to advance our material situation, to take care of the material body, to take care of material situation, material relationships, money, and just everything related to material life, material survival. And we use spiritual intelligence actually to think deeply and to connect with God. And although people, like there is some experts like Dana Zohar, experts on spiritual intelligence, they have books entitled Spiritual Intelligence. They speak actually about the mode of goodness, which is not spiritual mode of goodness. This, our teacher Srila Prabhupada, he made a distinction between pure goodness and impure goodness. And these people, they actually speak about goodness which is mixed with the mode of ignorance and passion. So that's the difference. But they still call it spiritual intelligence. But spiritual intelligence has to do with spiritual connection with God, with spiritual service. So if you are in spiritual process, you have some spiritual intelligence. Your spiritual intelligence is awakened. But if you are in some material situation and you are maybe a deep thinker, maybe you are very smart, you are very wise and like this. Maybe you have some spiritual intelligence, but it's basically mode of goodness thinking, and if it doesn't have a connection with God, then it's actually not spiritual. How can we foster our spiritual intelligence? For this we have spiritual knowledge, and spiritual knowledge stimulates spiritual intelligence. In one sense we can say that when you read something, your spiritual intelligence is tested, how much you can understand spiritual concepts, spiritual truths, spiritual ideas. So when you are exposed to reading spiritual books like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, then you can see how much you can understand. Srila Prabhupada said, as far as intelligence goes, you try to understand this as far as intelligence goes. Basically it means how much your spiritual intelligence can relate to this what you are reading. And also another most powerful way of awakening our spiritual intelligence is actually chanting of the mantras, because this cleanses the heart, this cleanses the coverings of the soul, and then the original nature of the soul comes up. And originally soul has spiritual intelligence. So how do we realize what we learn? How do we put theory into practice? How do we develop wisdom, so to say? It's only possible through practical action, actually. When we are, for example, when we are chanting the holy name and we are engaging in different spiritual activities, which we call devotional service, then this realization comes. Because we engage our senses in the spiritual activity, we engage our mind in the spiritual activity, we engage our intelligence in the spiritual activity, and we get purified. So this realization comes also together with purification. When you get purified, then you become convinced, and you have, it's called pratyaksha vagamam dharmyam, direct perception, direct experience of something. So if you are eating a very tasty food, I don't have to preach to you, it's very good, it's awesome, eat it. And you tell me, why are you telling me this? I'm already tasting this myself. So I don't need anybody to tell me, because I experience it myself. So similarly, by engaging in the process of bhakti yoga, you experience directly this susukam kartum avyayam, means this joy and higher taste.
Why do we keep to our opinions, also as devotees, so strongly and defend them like anything?
This is a great question. I think that we stick to our opinions because of false ego. But sometimes we may be right. If we are convinced about something, we may be right. But some people are attached to being right. Of course, you can be right if what you think is in line with the truth. And the truth is given in the scriptures. So if your thinking is in line with the scriptures, then you are right. And there is nothing wrong with that. So we need to learn to let go of our conceptions, and Shastra is training us, scriptures are training us, and acharyas, spiritual teachers, are training us to change the way we think, change our conceptions, change our paradigms. Paradigm is your mindset, or the way you think and the way you see things. And we have been taught by Srila Prabhupada to completely change the way we see the world. We see different values, what are the values, and so it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, what is the night for the self-realized it's a time of awakening for the conditioned soul. And what is the night for the conditioned soul is a time of awakening for the self-realized person. So it's like upside down. Like for this morning we spoke that for the materialist, sense gratification is God. And for the spiritualist, sense gratification is just some basic necessity that you have to fulfill in order to function in the material body, but your main goal is actually devotional service, not sense gratification. And it's not that your senses are not satisfied and gratified, but they are gratified in a way that doesn't degrade you. If you ask why do we defend them, I can ask you, why do you defend your concepts?
Because I hold them very important, or I feel I feel that I have an importance in them. It is, yeah.
But they may be wrong.
They might be wrong, actually.
So
Yeah.
we need to be open to being philosophically defeated.
Yes, because it's every defeat is a new eye-opening for a new perspective, because there's so many perspectives.
Regarding our own opinion, usually we actually are interested what is Krishna's opinion. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, this is my opinion. So we don't try to create something amazing with our own thinking, but actually we are trying to understand what is Krishna's opinion, because his opinion is absolute. His opinion is perfect, and acharyas also follow his opinion. So for us, we don't want to become a great thinker and a great scholar and always be right in everything, but we simply follow the acharyas and we follow Krishna. So it is very important to discuss Krishna's opinion. It's more important to discuss Krishna's opinion than to discuss our own opinion, because what do we know? We are in ignorance. So how much we can come up with a fascinating opinion. So we try to understand what he says, and if it's not important for Krishna whether envy or pride came first, why should we discuss it? Even Srila Prabhupada said, we don't know when we have fallen into this material world, we don't know how we got entangled in the material energy, so instead of trying to figure out how we have come here, it's better to think about how to get out. We learn about our attitude towards knowledge, towards philosophy from Srila Prabhupada. He said, if I have any credit in what I have done, it's only one thing. I didn't change Krishna's words, I didn't change Acharya's words. That's my only credit.
My next question is, how do we differentiate material and spiritual communication? So, yes.
Material communication is discussing material things. It's called prajalpa, speaking about material things. Speaking about things that are not related to Krishna consciousness or spiritual advancement. And spiritual is called Krishna Katha, discussion about Krishna, service to Krishna, devotees, devotional service, Krishna's incarnations, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's forms, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's names. These are all spiritual discussions. And one should be careful not to get entangled into discussions that don't lead to expansion of consciousness, expansion of spiritual consciousness. They don't lead to inspiration for devotional service and for spreading Krishna consciousness. What is the use of some discussion? I mean, what result do we want from a certain discussion? We can ask ourselves, what is the purpose? And therefore, when we discuss, downstairs when we discuss something, it's not downstairs, it's on this floor. If we discuss, then we we want to have a quality discussion, and we want to get ourselves inspired to serve Krishna and to love Krishna and to love devotees. Otherwise, what is the use arguing and being right and being wrong? So we want to use our time for spiritual inspiration through spiritual discussion. If you're not sure if your discussion is spiritual, you can stop and ask yourself, where is this discussion leading and what is the purpose of this discussion? If not, then you change the topic and speak about something which is more useful for your spiritual progress.
What is depression according to Vedic knowledge? How can we deal, overcome, transform it?
I don't know much about clinical definition of depression or so-called clinical depression, but I think people call depression also a state of mind where you have maybe this self-pity, or you feel sad, you feel bad, you feel hopeless, you feel helpless, and things like that. And definitely spiritual life enlivens you very much. You become very optimistic, very positive. You understand that you are eternal, that you are, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, that life is eternal, that you can access unlimited happiness, that you can stop dying. I mean, so many reasons to be optimistic. And usually why people feel bad or depressed is that they are not able to fulfill their desires. They are not able to fulfill their material desires for gratifying their senses and the mind. And in one sense, the conditioned soul feels sorry that it cannot be little God, that it cannot be in the center. I remember when I was young, and I was at my uncle and aunt's in a bigger city, and they have a better apartment, they have a better life, and I felt so sad that I'm not living with them. I had to go back to my hometown, which is more Tamaguna, and I was crying. And then one of the cousins came to me and gave me a little gift, a little sand watch. You know sand watch?
Yes.
And I was happy. and they were very, I don't know, these people were very kind of considerate. They didn't ask me why are you crying, but they just somehow wanted to pacify me. But I feel depressed because I was sorry that I cannot have the same life as they. So sometimes one is depressed because somebody has something that you want, something better, or you think it's better. And now we are coming to the most important point. To me, any kind of negative feeling, including depression, comes from negative self-talk. You have developed a habit of negative inner dialogue, negative self-talk, and it makes you miserable. Because you can explain the same thing in two ways. One is, this is a problem, and one is, this is an opportunity. So you can change your self-talk. And to me, this is a great, great tool for overcoming depression. And if you have Shastra, if you have spiritual knowledge, you can easily do that. You can use spiritual knowledge to change your inner dialogue. Therefore, if you are reading regularly, your inner dialogue actually is filled with that content that you are reading. Or with the holy name also. So what is the best antidote for the depressed mind? Depression is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna said he was depressed. And Krishna made him impressed. Krishna made him inspired by telling him the Bhagavad Gita. So spiritual knowledge or The holy name of the Lord is the best medicine for depression, and we can say that spiritual connection or connection to God through His holy name and through His holy word is the cure for depression. Depression is type of energy or being overwhelmed with material energy, and spiritual connection allows you or enables you to be connected with spiritual energy. And spiritual energy is full of bliss. The purpose of spiritual energy is spiritual enjoyment, higher enjoyment, full of bliss. So therefore, you cannot be miserable in spiritual energy. If you are in spiritual energy, if you are connected spiritually, if you are chanting the holy name, vibrating transcendental sound vibration, chanting the mantras, chanting the scriptures, there is no way you can be miserable or you can be depressed, because it's a completely different type of energy.